What is up, my friends and fellow BusyBees? We have officially reached the last podcast episode of the year. It's bittersweet. But today I wanted to take a look back at 2022 because it was kind of a huge year for me, and I hope for you too. And definitely a big year for the podcast considering this is like year one. It's just a little baby and growing up so fast. So I wanted to take a look back at 2022, but in order to do that, I wanted to look at a few different things. And because, like I always say, one of my core values is transparency, I wanted to bring numbers and analytics into this because I don't think enough people talk about it, and I think it's really helpful wherever you are in your journey to be able to have something to compare to. Now, we know that I always say that comparison is the thief of joy. So if this is something that will make you feel yucky and you know that it's not something that's good for you and your mental health, I'm going to do something that is probably against any marketing recommendation ever. But maybe this isn't the episode for you. Maybe you skip this one if you constantly find yourself like just playing that comparison game and looking at numbers. I'm going to be talking about numbers. And I fully realize there are people that have way more numbers than me and a lot of people that also have less. So I don't want anyone to feel a certain type of way, but I wanted to, number one, do this episode so I can look back years down the line and look back at where I was, where I came from, and have this as a bit of a point in time to reference. But I also thought it could be helpful just to kind of get some insight into the business side of things. Or if you're someone that's wanting to really take your furniture painting and refinishing business or hobby more seriously next year, hopefully this can be something that can give some insight into the things that I do day to day to run the business, to grow the business, to get more eyes on the business. And I hope it can be helpful. I really do. But I also want to celebrate my successes as well because, like I said, this was a big year for me. And I think we need to all do a better job at looking back and appreciating all the hard work we've put into things. And no matter how big or small those milestones might be, to really take a second to recognize them and appreciate your former self for helping you get there and putting in the work to get you there. So that's where today's episode comes from. So I dove deep into my books earlier today. This is actually a little bit earlier than I'm filming this. Today is Christmas Eve. So I normally film the episodes a couple days before they get posted, but when this episode goes live, we will have just gotten back from a little getaway to Quebec City that we are leaving for on Boxing Day, my husband and I. So I'm doing some pre-recording here. So I hope the trip went great and we had a great time. I'm sure we did. But let's jump into things. So number one, I wanted to go through just the milestones, the things that I started or I accomplished this year, and making note of those dates so I can remember them as I go forward, and just anything that was like my firsts, because I think it's important to recognize those firsts as well, because there's so many, especially in business, that you maybe overlook or you don't take the time to appreciate. So here's some of the ones that came to mind for me. So number one, the podcast, BusyBee Refinishing with MelDidItHerself. You might have heard of it. It officially launched June 2nd, 2022. I went full-time in the business, which is like the biggest milestone and the biggest date that I'm going to remember. And that was July 11th, 2022 was my day one of self-employment. Woohoo! Insert champagne popping emoji. I got my first kind of large-scale media appearance to promote MelDidItHerself on November 21st, and that was on CBC Radio, followed by a segment on CBC, like news, TV, whatever, in their Our Ottawa segment from that same interview. I launched the Friday Furniture Focus newsletter on November 4th, and we'll talk about some analytics from that a little bit later. I was on a couple other podcasts just to promote this one. So that was the Podcasting Business School podcast, as well as the Zebra Before and After Furniture Painting and Refinishing podcast. I don't know the official title. I should have looked that up. You all know it. I know you all listen to it. If you listen to this, I know you're listening to that one. I built and launched my own website. Fun fact, I got no external help did no hired help for my website. I don't know if that shows when you go to it. I hope it doesn't. But I really wanted to, dive into it and learn how to do that myself. I had heard a lot of entrepreneurs talk about how they hired someone to build their website and also help them in the ongoing support of it. And they would have like these little tweaks that they always wanted to do, but then they had to like outreach to somebody and then they add it to their to-do list, and then they do it, and then they have to let you know that they did it. I'm like way too hands-on and controlling for that. I was like, I need to learn how to do this myself. I need to figure it out. I love learning new things, so it was such a great thing to jump into and learn the platform of. I use Wix to host my website and my blog, and I've really enjoyed the features that it has so far. It is a free, you can get a free version of it, but I have upgraded a few different aspects of it in order to be able to do certain things. So anyways, that was a big deal for me to launch that because I'm quite proud of what it is and everything that has gone into it. There's definitely some tweaking I want to do now that I kind of have the big components in place. I want to go back and do some stuff to the homepage and things like that, but all the components and elements that I wanted to be there are there, and that's key. And then 2023 goals is to work on the search engine optimization to be able to get it to show up for people who are looking for similar things that I have on there and can find it basically and discover all the resources that I have. Okay, so what other milestones? This is something that I don't really talk about publicly, but I also do UGC work. So that's user-generated content. So basically freelance content creation. So if a brand or small business basically doesn't want to have to make so much content themselves, or they want to have videos either for their social media, their email marketing, their website, anything like that, they will pay freelance content creators to create content for them. So that might be, highlighting the features of a product they have, using it. They might have certain key messages they want. They might just want organic content that they can use on their social media, things like that. So that's a service that I offer, different from MelDidItHerself, but very similar in nature. So anyways, I also have that as a separate entity, and I created my own portfolio for that, which is kind of just like a free Canva website that I bought a URL that I linked the domain to. So that's a separate website that I also built and maintained and created social media profiles for and have kind of maintained. But all that to say, I started doing that I think in August, and just for some insight into that, I was doing that around the same time as I went full-time in this business, and I found that my attention was getting pulled in so many directions at once, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do a lot of things poorly. I'd rather focus on MelDidItHerself, put everything that I can into that, and then I can focus on the UGC stuff as I feel the need to, or be able to offer that as a separate service, whatever. So anyways, I set up those things in the background, but I haven't necessarily been actively marketing and promoting and pitching for those. But I got my first paid UGC deal October 17th. So that's another milestone that I want to mark. And within all of that, there's been so many other little tiny things that I've done for the first time. Honestly, I was talking about this work with my mom the other day, and I just said, in this job, I feel so challenged in a good way. And that's what I really love about it. I'm learning new things every day. There's always so much new information to take in, new resources to read, videos to consume, books to read, coaching to get. There's so many different things, so many different aspects of the job that go into it. And I really love learning new things and just challenging myself in that way and having things that I can work through one at a time and get to really deep dive into. So I've really, really loved and appreciated that of my last almost 6 months that I've been doing this. Wait, I'm horrible at math. I guess that's 5 months. Anyways, all that to say, it's been a lot of learning, and I love that about it. So then let's talk about social media, because I do think that this is something that a lot of people really focus really hard on the numbers, probably a lot more than we really need to be. Because if you're someone who you're not seeing the growth that you wish you were seeing, and you're getting kind of bummed out about it, just know that big numbers don't mean everything. Depending on what your goals are with your business and your brand, you could still get a ton accomplished with lower numbers in terms of your social media following. So I hope that is encouraging to you. Whether you're hoping to get partnerships with brands, a lot of brands appreciate a more intimate following and people that really trust you, and you're not just trying to appeal to the masses, but you really speak to those specific people. If you're wanting to just advertise your pieces within your market that you live and work in, then those numbers don't have to be humongous. You don't need to have 100,000 people from your town following you to be able to make some great sales and get a lot of eyeballs on you and your business. So remember that, because I think everybody's always trying to crawl to the top and be the best and most followed. There's like billions and billions of people on this earth, and you don't need every single one of them to be liking your photo on Instagram, okay? If you needed that reminder, there it is. But all that to say, slow, consistent growth can really pay off when you start looking at a larger period of time, like 1 year. So I guess because it's the 24th of December, it hasn't been a full year yet, so these analytics aren't as up to date as they will be when I set them in stone in my planners. But to get a rough idea, here we go. So at the beginning of 2022, my Instagram following was 4,379. I'm now at 7,572. My TikTok following started out at the beginning of this year with 1,526 followers, and it is now at 14,527 followers. I recently started paying more attention to other platforms, and one of those is Pinterest. I want to say, I didn't go back and look, but I want to say I started posting on Pinterest just a few times a week, probably like mid-October, I would say. And so on that platform, I only have 205 followers. I shouldn't say only. I have 205 followers, but on Pinterest, the following doesn't matter as much as how many eyeballs you're getting on your pins and how many people, I guess, are pinning the things that you're putting up there. So on average, across the few months that I've been doing it, it's anywhere from 19,000 to 25,000 monthly views that I am averaging. So that's a lot of people for not a lot of effort. So if Pinterest is something that you have not been utilizing in your business, that can be a great way to get a lot more people looking at your pieces, looking at the content, the educational stuff that you're putting out there, and then, you can redirect them to other platforms if you want. But it's used like a search engine, similar to TikTok now, for different demographics. So just putting that bug in your ear. And there's a lot of brands doing a lot of collaborations on TikTok, on TikTok, 100%, but also on Pinterest. So I don't know if that's something that interests you. Maybe you check it out. YouTube is something that I haven't made a big priority in my business, but it's always been there. It's been active. I started it probably in like 2020. And so I started this year with 719 followers, and I now have 2,037 followers or subscribers. And so with that, that's basically just recycled content. So I will take any longer form TikTok videos that I have that are relevant to furniture painting and refinishing, or thrifting, or like life hacks, DIY, furniture makeovers, that kind of thing. I'll just repurpose those as YouTube videos. And then anything that's shorter clips that are, I think, 90 seconds and under, I'll repurpose them as a YouTube short. And you get pretty good reach on there as well, depending on what you're posting. I will say that that's one platform I have not looked into the analytics of, like, when are most of my followers online, or when's ideal times to post. Basically, I have now a more set schedule, so I post something on YouTube every Wednesday. Sometimes I'll upload a few things if I have some content from like earlier in the week that I have at the ready. I'll upload it, but keep it private. And then whenever I think of it, I'll go in and like make that stuff active. So it's very much just like haphazardly done. And then I also upload every podcast episode to YouTube as well, in case there's people on there that are wanting to consume the podcast, but they don't have any podcast players that they frequent. So I always get some extra views that way as well. So that's pretty much all I do with YouTube. But you can see that there's still been growth, even from just doing that very, very relaxed, haphazard approach. Within the last month or so, I would say Twitter is somewhere that I have started to be a little bit more active. And it's because this is a place where I don't see a lot of people in this space showing up. So again, this is somewhere that I'm recycling content. like I said, I just started doing this, so a lot of the podcast information I will put there as a thread, similar to if you follow me on Instagram, MelDidItHerself. If you're not already following, go check it out. But on Instagram, I'll make carousels based on the podcast. If there's like some tangible tips, like 6 tips for whatever, I'll do a carousel post for that. And then I will turn the text from those into a thread on Twitter, add some hashtags for things that people might be searching for. And then hopefully people can come across my content, be like interested in finding out more. And then they might search for me on other platforms that they are active on, which I'm probably active on. So I've probably done like half a dozen tweets so far, so this is not very accurate information, but I wanted to make note of it so that I can refer back to this next year and see how much growth has come from the approach that I have set in stone. So I started at the beginning of this year with 0 people, and I have 16 whole followers there. But again, that's 16 new people looking at my content that I may have never otherwise found or have captured in my orbit, because, if Twitter's your platform of choice, you might not be on Instagram, you might not be on TikTok. Like, there's people hanging out in these different spaces, and a lot of the time I see people focusing solely on Instagram, and that's awesome. Instagram's a great platform, has tons of features. There's so many talented furniture painters and refinishers there, but there's just so many furniture painters and refinishers there. So I'm trying to look at places where other people haven't necessarily made it an effort in their strategy to show up, so I can capture some other people and let them find my stuff. And if they're interested in it, they can follow along. And if they are really interested in it, they can look for me elsewhere. But ultimately, I'm just trying to capture people that other people aren't, I guess. When I say it that way, it sounds a little skeezy, but I just want more people to learn, and I want to teach, and I want to help. So there you have it. And another place that I saw not a lot of people showing up talking about this stuff was on podcast platforms. So that's why I decided to start the podcast, and because, I don't know, I like to hear myself talk, I guess. Okay, so looking back at social media, so I didn't write this down, but now that I'm talking about showing up on different platforms, Reddit is somewhere else that I try and show up. I would say bi-weekly, I show up in a few different communities that I'm a part of, and I'll either post about the latest podcast episode if I think it's something that would interest people, or I'll even just show up and like comment on people's posts and help share some knowledge and some insight and stuff like that. And then if people are interested, they can go to my profile and find out what I'm all about. And then in terms of social media, I also, like I said, set up some profiles for UGC work. So I have a TikTok account and an Instagram account. I basically set it and forget it. I don't post there actively, but if ever I have content that I've created that I could repurpose that would work in that context, basically to show off the content creation and the user-generated content that I can create for brands, I'll just pop it over there. So the TikTok I started at the beginning of the year, or I think I started that in like June maybe, with 0 followers, and without doing really all that much work, I have 694 followers there. TikTok is a platform that I don't think enough people are really paying attention to. I think a lot of people have a negative connotation because of, privacy, information, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of the belief that if I carry this thing around in my pocket all day, every day, there's a lot of people that know my information. But anyways, that's a separate discussion. But all that to say, if you have not been taking TikTok seriously or thinking about it as a viable option, you can get a lot of reach over there with very little effort. And something that I offer through my user-generated content work for brands and small businesses is TikTok strategy consultation. So brands can hire me if they're either they don't have a TikTok yet, or they have been posting but not really getting a lot of growth on there. Basically, I'll look at their content, see what they're doing, and then we'll have a one-on-one call. I'll talk about ways that I would suggest that they tailor their content, maybe things that they're doing or not doing, or filming different and that kind of stuff. And I'll give them content ideas, so different videos that they can do to have as their content pillars. I will give them recommendations to optimize their bios so that people are finding them that are looking for them. I will give them a list of recommended hashtags for them to reach their ideal clients, and a few other things. So anyways, we have a one-on-one call. I give them a big document outlining all my recommendations for them, and then they take it and go and grow. So that's something that I offer through my UGC work, but I also am now offering that to anyone who's interested on the MelDidItHerself side. So I just recently added that to my website as a service offering. I haven't really promoted it yet, but if someone's listening to this and they are like, TikTok, should try that, have no fucking idea what to do with it, check it out. If you're interested, reach out to me. I was involved in the TikTok Accelerator program for Indigenous creators a couple months ago, and that was super helpful because I'm hearing from people who run the platform what performs well, what they recommend, different tools that you can utilize as a creator on there, and different growth strategies. So that was really helpful. Even just to validate things that I was already doing and things that I was hearing. There's so much competing information out there. So to be able to hear that from the source was like very helpful. And I can now bring that with me, the notes that I have, to these brands and people who are trying to grow their accounts and are interested in some support in doing so. So anyways, that was a tangent. Sorry. So for my UGC Instagram account, which I think I have like 8 posts over there, like again, I set it and forget it. I started that like mid-August, but haven't probably posted there. And I think I did one kind of recently, but anyways, I'm never on there. I started that and I have 123 followers. So small, but it's there if people are searching for it. I've optimized the bio. I have my portfolio linked. Like all the things are there. If people are searching and looking for this support, they can find me, and I have those avenues set up. So it's kind of like a listing, if you will. So let's talk about the podcast. So like I said, I launched this in June. Early June is when episode 1 went out. And it's something that in 2023, I do have goals to really grow the podcast because number one, and most importantly, I've been really loving showing up here every week, chatting with you guys, being able to chat with people afterwards about the content in the episode or just about things that it brought up. Getting the feedback from you guys that you are enjoying it is like so heartwarming. Yeah, anyways, I won't go into that because I'll get emotional, but I really, really appreciate you guys being here. And so I looked into the numbers, and I do keep track every month it's called the content planner. I can link in the show notes the small business that provides them. I really enjoy it because I'm a pen and paper kind of gal. So I can go back and month over month, I keep track of, let me open it up here because that's what I was looking through to get these numbers in the first place. So every month for the podcast, just for your reference, I keep track of the number of plays. I don't look at downloads because me as a podcast consumer, I don't download shows. I just stream them and listen to them like while I'm on Wi-Fi. So it might be information that like sponsors might be interested in, but I haven't been looking at that. Maybe I should add that to my list of things to do. But what I basically look at every month is the amount of plays. And then relative to last month, the amount of plays, I look at the demographic makeup. So the countries that you guys are from, the platforms that you're listening on, the demographics in terms of age and gender. And then I look at my top episodes and which ones are performing best. And that kind of helps me to understand what kind of content you're interested in longer term so I can make more things that are tailored to that, if that makes sense. So I looked at my growth in terms of the plays that are happening every month and figured out the growth rates month to month, and then I figured out the average growth rate just because I think it's useful information for me to have and to be able to look back on, like I said. So my average growth rate month over month is 41.33%. So that's amazing, I think, in my humble opinion. I was going to explain why that was good, but now I'm having trouble articulating what that means tangibly. I just shoveled like 500 feet of snow, so my brain is like broken. But anyways, that seems like a number that's good for me. So it's positive, and that's the benchmark. So I'm going to look at it next year and see how are we growing in comparison to that. I didn't look recently, but as of last month, the number 1 episode was Furniture Makeover 101 Guide, which is episode number 4. So that makes sense because I go over basically how to walk through your first furniture makeover. So that makes sense that people are looking for that. And now I have the little ebook that I sell to accommodate that, which is a more in-depth version of what I would do for my first furniture makeover, which includes products I would recommend and tips and tricks to make it easier. Based on the feedback from the episodes that said this is what most people are listening to, I was like, this seems like a good resource that some people might find beneficial. So that's kind of how I think through that aspect. And then the last thing is kind of like the most important thing in my opinion. It's my email list. I started this around, I think, August. I don't really remember. Basically, whenever I launched my website, people could start signing up to my email list. And then it was a couple months later that I started actively advertising it because I launched the Friday Furniture Focus newsletter on November 4th. So I have 8 versions of that have been sent since because I send them every Friday. And if you aren't already on that list, I really recommend you go sign up. So the Friday Furniture Focus newsletter, basically I show up every week and I bring you furniture painting and refinishing inspo. So I always highlight what was on the podcast that week for anyone that missed it. I share a furniture fact or a furniture fix so you can make over your furniture pieces easier. I share pieces that I've been inspired by lately, any other little things. I'm thinking of some other stuff that I might add into the newsletter in 2023. I just don't want it to be too long that people find it like annoying to have to read through. So I'm going to play with that and see where the fine balance is because so far I've gotten great feedback on it. But we also do a Q&A with a furniture painter and refinisher every week to get to know them, their pieces, and their business a bit better too. So I've really loved that. Just being able to highlight people who are doing awesome stuff in this sector, this area. I just love to be able to shine the spotlight on others, and I think other people have enjoyed discovering new artists as well. So the email list, if you're someone that doesn't already have or are working on creating an email list, let me tell you why I'm doing this. Do you remember, I don't know if it was this year or last year, when Instagram and Facebook went down for like 2 days and everyone was like freaking out? The people who had an email list were not freaking out because they knew even if those platforms vanished into thin air the next day, that they would still be able to contact the people who show up to consume them and their content and their ideas every day. I listened to a podcast on digital entrepreneurship and marketing called This Old Marketing, and they always talk about how any social media platform is a great way to have people discover you and find your content, and you can nurture them ongoingly, but it's rented land. Like tomorrow, Instagram, TikTok, whoever could decide to change their algorithm, change their policies, change their platform completely, and they have the right to do so in those terms and conditions that none of us read. They have like full agency to do whatever the hell they want. So in order to stay in good standing with people, they often don't do super drastic things, but they can. And when things happen that are out of our control, like the platforms going down, it can be stress-inducing, especially if that's the only thing that you have going on and your only way to contact the people who show up for you every day. So an email list is a way to combat that, and it's people that are like most interested in hearing what's coming from you. I know that I'm very selective with the newsletters that I sign up for and that I allow in my inbox. I go through and unsubscribe from places that like ask for your email when you're checking out and they just want to add you on so they can be like, oh, we have a sale. I'm like so selective with that. I go through and unsubscribe from people all the time. And it's because like I only have so much time in my day and I don't want to read a bunch of stuff from a bunch of people that I don't really care about. So that's why I am so selective in what I send to my email list too. Like when I'm doing the Friday Furniture Focus, I'm trying to bring value to you. I'm trying to bring things that I think you'll enjoy receiving and learning and seeing. But I'm not just going to like pop in haphazardly all the time because I don't want you to get annoyed with me. I don't want to ruin that relationship that I've tried to foster with you. And I want us to be friends. So like I want to be able to be like, hey, and you'd be like, hey, what's she about to say? All that to say, I have goals for growing my email list because that is the ultimate like place that I can nurture my audience. So my goal for this year was to hit 200 subscribers, and guys, I'm at 197. I just checked it, which is so exciting but so frustrating. So if anybody is not on that newsletter list that wants to receive that every week, please. I never beg, but if like 3 people could go and sign up and help me hit my goal before the end of this year, I would really appreciate it. And like I said, I try and jam that thing packed with as much that I can that I think you'll be interested in receiving. So if you're a fan of painted and refinished furniture, just like 3 of you could just go and click the link. I'll put it in the show notes of this episode, or you can just go to my website, MelDidItHerself.ca. But like, I'm so close. So I also calculated on that newsletter the analytics. So two things that I've learned that are benchmarks to look at your newsletter analytics are the open rate and the click-through rate, because that's basically showing how many people are actually interested in what you're sending them. Like, it can end up in their inbox, but if they're just leaving it unread, they're obviously not that interested in it. And so the average across the 8 newsletters that I have sent thus far, the average open rate is 54%, which sounds like, it's funny because we celebrate these numbers, but it's like basically almost half of people that receive it don't even end up opening it. But I get it. Like, people's inboxes are jam-packed with stuff, so I don't take it personally or anything. But I was curious and I looked up what the average open rate across industries is, and I found some research by MailChimp, which is like a email service provider, so they can see back-end analytics, and the average is 21.33%. And I'm at 54%, so I was like, okay, that works for me. And then the average click-through rate, I'm at 3%. I do link to quite a few things in my newsletter though, so that's fair enough. But I was also interested in what the average is, and the average across industries is 2.91%, so that works for me. Okay, so that was a lot of information, a lot of numbers, but again, I wanted to set it in stone, mark it, so I can refer back. I hope it might have been helpful for you listening to either feel better about your growth if you're killing it in comparison to me, or just to know like what the reality is. Like I said, I'm almost 6 months into doing this full time, but I am spreading my time and my energy and my efforts across A, multiple services that I offer, B, multiple platforms, and C, multiple types of content that I'm creating. So if you have a more laser focus on one thing, you're probably able to grow that thing much larger. But I hope it's helpful to see the back end of kind of what goes into it and to understand the analytics. And maybe, hopefully, you learned about an email list as well and might be interested in adding that to your to-do list for 2023. And you know that I always end a podcast episode with Mel's motivational message, but today, for the last episode of 2022, instead, I know you're going to be seeing so many motivational messages all over the place because people are about to go ham with New Year, New You content. So I think you're probably good till next week, but I just wanted to say a very, very heartfelt thank you to everybody who shows up here every single week to listen. Podcasting is unique in that it's very much a part of our like day-to-day lives. Like, you probably have a certain time of day on a certain day that you listen to this, whether you're on your way to work on Thursday mornings or you're headed home after work on Thursday afternoon, you're out taking the dog for a walk, you're at the gym, you're in the workshop. There's probably a very certain time of the week that you're listening to me, and just know that I value being there with you every week so very much. And I really hope that you're getting something from the podcast and you're learning new things and you're just getting good insight into what it's like to run a furniture painting and refinishing business and do these furniture makeovers. And so with that, I say goodbye for 2022. I will catch you in the new year. I hope you are all enjoying some great quality time with the people you love. And I wish you a happy and safe new year. And I'll catch you in 2023. Bye, guys.